How the church taught you to fear money or wealth without you. Even knowing or realizing it, if you're watching this and you're a Christian, I need to say something right at the start. This video isn't here to attack your faith. It's not here to weaken it. And it's definitely not here to make you feel judged or exposed. Honestly, has faith been a source of comfort, hope, or strength in your life? I respect that deeply. What this video is really about is something quieter, something most of us never stop to examine. It's about the way we've been taught to interpret things that shapes our psychology, and how that psychology quietly shapes our effort, our guilt, our ambition, and yes, our relationship with money, often without us even realizing it. This isn't about what you believe, it's about how you've been conditioned. And here's the thing, conditioning works on everyone, even the most sincere people. Part 1. Why good people stay stuck. One of the most heartbreaking things to witness is this. People who are disciplined, kind, intelligent, prayerful, hardworking, still remain financially stuck, not just for a season, not just temporarily, but year after year after year. They work hard but never seem to get ahead. They give generously but live with this constant low-grade anxiety. They believe deeply but feel this quiet, nagging frustration underneath it all. And over time, many of them start to internalize a painful conclusion. Maybe this is just my portion. Maybe this is what humility looks like. Maybe wanting more means I'm ungrateful. But here's what psychology tells us. People don't live according to what they want. They live according to what feels emotionally safe, and emotional safety is learned. Part 2. Belief versus conditioning. There's a distinction here that changes everything once you see it. Belief is what you consciously agree with. Conditioning is what your nervous system reacts to. You can believe that money is neutral, while your stomach still tightens when you think about raising your prices. You can believe that effort matters, while subconsciously feeling like pushing too hard is somehow dangerous. You can believe that abundance is allowed, while feeling uneasy the moment life starts feeling comfortable. That's because conditioning bypasses logic. It's stored as an emotional memory. And religious conditioning? It often starts early, way before we have the language to question it. Part 3. How money became morally loaded. In many church environments, money was rarely talked about as a tool. It was talked about as a test, not always explicitly, but subtly, indirectly. Money got associated with pride, corruption, distraction, spiritual danger. Even when no one actually said, money is bad, the emotional framing communicated loud and clear, money is dangerous. So, over time, money stopped being neutral. It became morally charged, and once something becomes morally charged, your brain treats it with caution, sometimes even with avoidance. This is why so many believers feel that internal conflict when they think about pursuing wealth. Excitement mixed with guilt, desire mixed with fear, opportunity mixed with hesitation. Not because they're confused, but because two internal systems are at war. Part 4. The quiet guilt loop. Guilt is one of the most powerful forces shaping behavior. And it doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It's actually more effective when it's quiet. It whispers things like, be careful, don't go too far, stay humble. You don't need all that. And this makes people unconsciously cap themselves. They undercharge. They avoid negotiating. They delay expansion. They hesitate right at the edge of growth. Then they spiritualize the hesitation. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I should wait. Maybe I should just be content. But contentment and suppression, those aren't the same thing. Psychologically, suppressed desire doesn't just disappear. It turns into resentment, fatigue, quiet envy. Part 5. A scene you might recognize. Picture this. A highly skilled Christian professional sits across from a potential employer or client. They know their value. They've got the experience, they've got the results. But the moment the conversation shifts to compensation, something changes. Their voice softens. They start adding disclaimers. I'm flexible. I don't want to seem greedy. Whatever you think is fair. Afterward, they feel unsettled. Not because they lied, but because they betrayed their own worth. This isn't humility. This is learned discomfort with claiming value. Does that sound familiar? Part 6. How struggle became an identity. Here's another powerful piece of conditioning. The moral elevation of struggle. Struggle was framed as the proof of faith, evidence of depth, a sign of endurance. Ease, on the other hand, treated with suspicion. So many people learned, without ever being directly told, that if life is hard, you're doing something right. And if life becomes easier, something might be wrong. Over time, struggle stopped being a phase. It became a personality trait. And here's the thing, identities aren't easily released. When financial improvement threatens an identity built on endurance, the mind resists. Not because wealth is bad, but because losing struggle feels like losing meaning. Part 7. Passivity mislabeled as trust. This might be one of the most damaging confusions created by this kind of conditioning. Trust got slowly blended with passivity. Planning too much felt suspicious. Strategizing felt unspiritual. Pushing felt like forcing. So people learned to wait instead of build, to hope instead of prepare, to endure instead of design. In psychology, this is called an external locus of control. When you believe outcomes are orchestrated entirely outside of yourself, effort decreases. Not out of laziness, but out of resignation. And resignation is very expensive. Part 8. Why ambition felt dangerous. Ambition was rarely taught as a neutral drive. It was framed as ego, pride, self-centeredness. So, people learned to downplay desire. I don't need much. I'm okay where I am, as long as I have peace. And look, those statements aren't wrong, but when they're used to silence growth, they become psychological brakes. A person who feels unsafe wanting more will never pursue wealth with clarity. They'll circle it, justify it, explain it, but they'll rarely move boldly toward it. Part 9. Here is another scene. Maybe you've seen this too. A business owner with a great product keeps their prices low to show kindness. An employee who deserves a promotion turns it down to avoid pressure. A creative refuse to monetize their work to stay pure. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. Eventually, frustration sets in. Not at God, but at life itself. What they don't realize is this. They weren't choosing faith over money. They were choosing emotional safety over growth. Part 10. Why behavior, not belief, creates wealth. Wealth isn't created by belief. It's created by behavior repeated over time. Behavior like setting boundaries, claiming value, learning systems, making uncomfortable decisions, delaying short-term comfort for long-term stability. But behavior only happens when your nervous system feels safe. If wealth feels morally risky, your behavior will avoid it. If ambition feels dangerous, your behavior retreats. This isn't spiritual failure, it's psychological conditioning. This is not a rejection of faith. Let me be crystal clear about this. Faith can coexist with ambition. Trust can coexist with planning. Humility can coexist with excellence. But faith without awareness becomes vulnerable to distortion. Many believers were never taught to separate humility from self-erasure, contentment from stagnation, trust from inaction, sacrifice from chronic deprivation. That confusion has real consequences. Part 11. The turning point. Awareness. Awareness isn't rebellion. Awareness is responsibility. When you realize that guilt was learned, fear was inherited, passivity was normalized, and desire was moralized, you regain choice. And choice restores agency. what faith without psychological blindness looks like. Faith without blindness looks grounded. It doesn't fear wealth. It doesn't worship struggle. It doesn't apologize for growth. It understands that. Wanting more doesn't mean being ungrateful. Planning doesn't mean lacking trust. Charging fairly doesn't mean greed. Rest doesn't mean laziness. It allows spirituality to support life, not shrink it. Here's a question worth sitting with. If money carried no guilt for you, what would you do differently this year? What would you ask for? What would you build? What would you stop apologizing for? Sit with that. In closing, you weren't weak, you were just shaped, and anything that's been shaped can be reshaped. Faith doesn't require blindness. Devotion doesn't require poverty. Awareness isn't betrayal. Awareness is freedom. The end